Hello everybody, welcome to episode 200 and... Do you want to guess? Do you want to venture a guess? Chris?
How long ago was the last one we did? Like 2 weeks ago or last week?
This morning. But it was me and...
No, you and I. When was the last one you and I did?
I think
last week.
I think it was last week.
And that was like, you said 243, I think. So let's go 247.
Ah, close. 248, this one.
Damn.
I know, man. You win the prize one day. Got a question from somebody on LinkedIn. From Germany. All the way from Germany. Your people, your ancestors.
No, mine are Americans.
Yes. So he's from Germany. Hey, here's a question for your podcast. Great fan. Thank you very much. Always listening to you on my way to work.
In Germany?
Double thank you very much.
In Germany, on his way to work in Germany?
Yeah, on the Autobahn.
Yeah, nice, okay.
Hopefully speeding pleasantly. 120 miles per hour.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm a clinical research assistant.
That would be miles per hour, by the way.
I know they use kilometers per hour. I've never driven on the Autobahn, but I have been on the Autobahn, just not driving.
Okay.
Alright, I'm a clinical research assistant with some experience in data analytics. And by the way, when I was in Germany last, I was in senior in high school. And
Well, that'd been fun to drive the Autobahn.
yeah, the Autobahn, like I thought it would be so cool. And then you get on there and people are driving. I mean, yeah, there's a few people that speed, but most of the people are driving normal.
Like what's normal, 80 miles an hour?
Yeah, like they do here.
Okay.
But there are not as many lanes as here.
Okay.
So it's not like people are going, I mean, you know, from the time I was there, I didn't see anything extraordinary, really, as you would imagine. I'm a clinical research assistant with some experience in data analytics, looking for a career in clinical operations. Okay? Are you with me?
Data analytics, and he wants to get into operations.
Yeah, but he's currently an assistant.
Okay.
So he already is in operations, kind of.
Right.
Let's read further.
Okay.
I have a question and possible topic for podcast.
Okay.
I'm always trying to stay up to date with the current industry news and trends, and therefore I'm heavily interested in centralized and risk-based monitoring and the digital future of clinical trial monitoring. Who do you think will be working as a central monitor? What are the skills required, and how can I better prepare now to get such a job in the future?
Wow.
So, a lot to unpack.
Yeah, quite a handful there.
Quite. A lot to unpack. I'm extremely mellow.
Well, first off, I would start with most likely it goes there, but there's always a possibility it doesn't.
Right. Most likely it goes there. I think risk-based monitoring has been around since, like, it's been a household name in the industry since 2015. But it's been increasing in popularity ever since, but it's kind of slowed down a little. So that could mean two things. Either it's already integrated into every monitoring plan, which I don't believe, because I dabble in a good amount of monitoring myself.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not using risk-based monitoring for any of the studies I'm on.
Right.
It's all traditional. Or it's not being utilized as people thought.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it won't. There's such long runways in this industry that
Oh, without a doubt.
from idea in conception till it's actually being implemented,
Full implementation.
it could be a decade.
Could be even more.
Right. Now, what I am seeing taking off is virtual trials. I'm hearing way more people talk about that.
Yeah, but
From a sponsor perspective, the student I interviewed today, the former student I interviewed, you want to get that?
no.
Put on speaker.
No.
The student I interviewed today, he didn't even know it, but he's working on a virtual trial. They have one PI who he works for at the Veterans Administration. They're doing a study for suicide prevention. And they're enrolling patients all across the country through a telephone consent process.
But wouldn't you say this is similar to how the risk-based monitoring started out too? It was a very hot topic. Everybody was interested in doing it. Some sponsors were.
Yeah.
Could be the same thing with virtual trials.
Well, virtual trials has been around since 2010. Pfizer did the very first virtual trial ever. I interviewed their director, Craig Lipset, 3 times about virtual trials, and he's still championing this cause. And he's at Pfizer, and the reason why, I mean, it's cheaper for them.
Sure.
It makes sense, right?
Sure.
Now, someone brought up a good point. It was a doctor who brought this up when I brought up virtual trials. He said, well, if the sponsor is the one collecting the data on the subjects for their own studies, isn't there a conflict of interest there?
I would certainly think so.
Right?
Yeah, where's their financial disclosure forms?
So there's a
Instead
few,
of 25,000, it's like 25 billion or million.
So there's still a few kinks that need to be worked out. I think there still need to be intermediary companies like DSCS, like, I mean, anybody, who, like a CRO, to keep that extra layer between the patient and the sponsor. Right?
Yeah, I think you run a high risk of cover up. Right? Something
What's
looks negative as they're conducting the trial. Right? So Pfizer is conducting a virtual trial. There's no middleman, right? There's no PIs.
No, they would use one PI.
Okay, one.
Yeah,
Right.
for the whole
That's
study.
employed by Pfizer.
Or contracted, but yeah.
Essentially employed by Pfizer.
Right. But aren't regular investigators employed?
In a different way.
So how so?
Because I think this person, I mean, it could be a 1099, but most likely it would be a W-2 investigator. Right?
It could be, yeah.
I just see that as a huge conflict. I mean, we've already had experience with sponsors, and they tell sites wholesale. They tell them to delete some data, right? You recall this?
I do recall this. Why don't you explain to the viewers
I just
without
did.
giving the name? Look,
I
give them more than that.
They didn't like a certain data set. They told all the sites to delete it, right, when the protocol required it.
Yeah.
And they did not amend the protocol.
I remember getting that email, and you and I were like, "Whoa, wait a minute." I mean, we did what we were told.
Right, but no protocol amendment, left in the protocol that this should be done, but they said delete it. Right, straight from the sponsor.
Yeah.
Right, and a large sponsor, a big one, like Pfizer.
International.
Yeah, like
So
just like Pfizer.
Not Pfizer, so
Correct.
we don't get sued here.
Yeah, not Pfizer, but same ballpark, size-wise, right? So, yeah, I just think they're going to do what's beneficial to their company, right? Which, while I would say that's probably against the regulations, I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. You usually want to make what's the best decision for your company and your
Yeah,
business.
and we should have had Darshan on, because I don't know the actual regulations that the government puts on pharma companies, and by the way, maybe there's not many, because pharma companies are the #1 biggest lobbyists every year, right? But is there a law that states, because there's advertising laws, and this is what Darshan specializes in, they can't advertise directly to consumers, and if they do, I mean, there's ways they can, like those TV ads, but then you have to preface it at the end with,
All the side effects.
and then you could still only get it from your doctor.
Right.
So there's some rules around advertising and making claims, but are there rules to actually communicating with patients, like in a research setting? Because in our studies, we do regular studies, not virtual. Sponsors don't interact with patients at all. Like
Right.
they don't, they're not even supposed to see their names.
Right.
Date of birth, initials, and no socials, no driver's license, none of that.
It's
Right.
just a unique ID number assigned to the patient. That's all they see of the patient.
Right, so I'm curious if there actually is any regulations in regards to pharma companies being allowed to, and I know I signed a CDA, I'm not going to mention the name, but there's a drug company out there, nobody knows them, they're super small, but they're big enough, I mean, they're making a lot of money. They have a diagnostic,
Okay.
and then you have to get the diagnostic through your doctor. So once a doctor prescribes this diagnostic to the patient, and the patient uses it, it goes into the sponsor's database, so they know who their users are, right? It's meant to be for safety things,
Sure.
like recalls and stuff
Sure.
like that. But now they're doing a study, and they want to communicate to these people to join their open label phase 4 study, right? And these patients, I mean, they were prescribed this product, but they don't know who that drug company is necessarily.
Right.
Are they allowed to communicate with them? I think they are, because I received something in my mailbox, actually my wife did, from I don't know, one of the big pharmas, because she was taking a thyroid med.
Mm-hmm.
So they sent her something, and we looked at it, and it was about, it wasn't about a study, but it was about doing like some kind of a survey.
Okay.
So they have access to their customers. Now,
But you're not a customer when you're in a study. You're not a customer, right? You're not.
right, but what if you are a customer and then you're put in a study?
I think that's okay, honestly, because I think. Well.
See, there's going to be a conflict of interest at some point, because if you're the sponsor and the site, which is what siteless trials are trying to do. I mean, they even call these virtual trials siteless trials.
I'm not an expert on HIPAA. Is that a HIPAA violation in some way? To be a consumer of a product, and then they use that information
For research.
so they know if you qualify for a study.
Yeah.
Is that a HIPAA violation
I
in
don't
some
know.
way?
And that's kind of why this group was reaching out to me. And I said, I'm no Darshan Kulkarni, but I can help you put a strategy together
Right.
for how to engage these people, besides just cold calling them
Right.
and sending mailers.
Right.
There's strategies, we're not going to get into that here, but I put together like a 3-page strategy.
But I
Never heard back, because I actually didn't want that project,
Mhm.
because we're so busy, but I just put such a huge number on it that
Right.
I wouldn't have been upset if I got it. But I haven't heard back.
Well,
But
you're
it's
well then.
yeah, I didn't hear back, but it's a good strategy, what I put together. So
Sure.
I'll use it for someone else, because it's going to work.
Now, I would say, I'd almost say certainly it has to be a HIPAA violation to come to take the information of a research participant and to basically unblind that person, so you can have all their information, have their names, so you can contact them about other studies or other whatever devices, medicine.
Or what about track their outcomes without their consent?
Right, so that's why there's IRBs, right?
Because essentially what they were sending my wife was a survey, tracking her outcomes.
See, I'm not sure that's a HIPAA violation.
I don't know, and they have armies of lawyers, so I'm sure what they're doing is legal. These
Right.
big ones, at least.
Right.
But some of the smaller ones you don't know. And then with siteless trials, they're actually calling virtual trials siteless trials.
Well, see, that's
So that means the sponsor is not just the sponsor; they are the site and the CRAs and every patient
Sure.
recruiters and everything, right?
Sure.
And they can have vendors for all these things too. Like they can outsource to a company like ours to do the CRO stuff. So they're one layer.
There certainly needs to be an IRB still involved.
Yeah, the IRBs are involved.
But the problem here is, I think, since they're siteless trials, and essentially Pfizer's the site now,
Yeah.
right? So they have all their information. It's no longer blinded, right? So they can take that information. I don't know what prevents them from doing this, but I'm sure it'd have to be a HIPAA violation. They can turn around and use that information somehow. Whether it be to approach them about a product they have. Hey, we see that from your medical history here, you have this, this, and this. You might be interested in this product we have.
Right.
I don't see what prevents them from doing that,
Right.
right?
And this is where you need experts like Darshan.
Yeah. But I think that's going to be a HIPAA violation.
And see, new technologies, and especially like paradigm shifting technologies and innovations that disrupt, they're going to require, they're going to create new opportunities for other people. Like, you can be the CRO whose niche is in virtual trials. They already are popping up everywhere. We're trying
Sure.
to do that too.
Sure.
You can be a site whose niche is virtual trials, right? And say, hey, why not use us as the site? Keeps that extra layer between you and the patients. And we can have independent people be the CRAs for our site. So there's people positioning themselves to take advantage of this, and I think it's smart. I don't think you should bet the barn on it, but I think anybody who's in this space, and this goes right back to the viewer's question, or the listener's question, on central monitoring. What does this position look like? And we're going to have, when our CRO projects get started really soon, we finally have the EDC in place.
Well, it's all electronic, right?
It's all electronic, but I was going to tell you, we have Vince, who's going to be the central monitor.
Right.
So he's going to have access to the source documents in a virtual portal. He's going to have access to the EDC, and he's going to be able to source data verify and source data review virtually.
But
right?
I was talking about virtual trials when I said it's all done remotely, right? Because it's electronically, right?
Yeah.
There's no paper source.
Well, correct. You still can. Like with the student I just interviewed in episode 277.
Okay.
Right. We're on 278. No, 248. So on episode 247, he's working on a virtual trial. They're not calling it a virtual trial, but the way he explained it to me, it is.
Mm-hmm.
They're using paper source. Because it's all telephone. All the assessments, all the data points are through the phone, and he's the one collecting the info.
I think that's not a virtual trial, though. What's
the virtual
strict
trial
definition of virtual?
Sightless is the way the term is used is it's done. The patients could be anywhere in the country, and they don't need to be dependent on having a site nearby. That's the way. That's the benefit of virtual trial. At least that's the way the industry is positioning it.
Okay.
See, for the industry to get things pushed their
Yeah,
way,
it's paperless. Virtual's paperless.
ideally it's paperless.
Well,
the actual word virtual is paperless.
Right.
I'm telling you the way they're positioning it from pharma. It doesn't have to be paperless. Yes, it's ideal if it's paperless, but it could be that the patients are not restricted to a site, a physical site.
No, I get that, but I think the philosophy here is to completely eliminate the sites. That's why you want it virtual, right?
I don't think it's just to eliminate sites. I think it's to reduce cost for the sponsors.
Which they do that by eliminating sites.
They're eliminating the need for this many sites. Maybe they just need one site.
They just need a call center.
And that's the plan, to have this one site with one
It's not
investigator.
even really a site, it's just a call center.
No, it's a site, because there is an investigator.
Okay,
it's
it's called
supposed
a
to
call
be-
center with an investigator.
And the investigator is supposed to not be an employee of the pharma company, but then again, that word can be loosely thrown around.
Sure.
What, is he a consultant? Is he a contractor? What is an employee? Just W-2? Okay, that's easy to do. Most PIs don't want to be W-2 anyways.
Right.
They'll be consultants. But the way pharma positions these things, and I'm not for or against virtual trials, I'm a reactor. Whatever happens in the market, I want to adapt. I want to change DSCS to be able to capitalize.
Well-
And it's not like virtual trials are eliminating the need for traditional trials. We're not trying to be alarmist. We're just looking into the future. But the way pharma gets these things implemented is here's the craziest part.
Mhm.
It's under the guise of patient centricity. Let's make this easier for the patients.
See,
Do you see what they're doing? I mean, yes, who can argue with let's make it easier for the patients? It'd be a shame if somebody in North Dakota qualifies for a study, but there's no site near them. Like, yes, there's value add there,
okay.
but the way they're getting these things implemented is this is patient centric. We're making this so that the patients
No, I get
can
it.
be
The
more
blah,
involved.
blah, blah.
Right. What do you think about that?
Well,
Nothing wrong with patient centricity.
no, of course not. There's nothing wrong with that. But really, I think, because when you say it doesn't really matter to you either way, right? Virtual trials or not, I think,
Yeah,
I think the value add there is, does it in any way add safety or take away from safety, right? Whether it be to the patients participating
yeah.
or to the market in general if the drug is approved. Does it add or take away from safety? I would say it probably takes away, personally. But
Takes away from the study participants.
both safety of the study participant and if the drug ever is approved from the overall value of what research was
To
done
the marketplace.
to the marketplace.
I think it's neutral in the study if it's done properly. Like in the ideal world, the effects on the patients in the studies would be zero. It'd be the same.
Don't you think it's better if they see a physician in person opposed to I'm going to talk to
Through a
this person?
Skype.
I want to talk to this person over the phone or internet.
Depends on the indication. Obviously, for some things you have to go in person.
Okay.
For now, still. But I think for the patients in the study, it's a neutral safety. You can argue, I'll play devil's advocate. Again, I'm not for or against virtual trials. I'm here to take advantage of what the market gives
Sure.
us. For the overall market, once a drug is approved, you can actually argue it will enhance public safety because they can theoretically enroll more patients quicker and get more AEs and capture more SAEs.
Get more data
And
quickly.
get a more macro collection of data as opposed to just a bunch from California, a bunch from Florida, a few from the Midwest. Now you can truly get it doesn't matter where you live. You know, North Dakota, you don't need to go to Chicago to do a study. You can do it from your home. We'll send a nurse to you to draw the blood. You can Skype once a week or whatever the protocol calls for with the PI. If you're having an AE or SAE, go to the hospital. We can get the data from them. You
Okay.
can see how this is appealing to a sponsor.
Sure, and I can see your argument how that might be safer to the general public.
It's supposed to help enrollment.
But I still get back to, I still think there's going to be some funny business going on behind the curtains.
Oh, there's always going to be those kind of things going on.
But I think it's going to be more prevalent here.
There's funny business going on now. We just introduced this podcast with the sponsor told us
Of
to
course,
delete data.
of course. But guess what? The FDA comes out to sites and looks at the sites, right?
Well, the FDA would still audit it in the virtual trial.
Yes, but how much easier would it be for the sponsor knows when they know what they need to hide, right, and to take care of that.
But with
If they wanted to do that.
With electronic systems, here's another, I'm going to keep playing devil's advocate. With electronic systems, we use eSource at our site
Okay.
in Costa Mesa. It is almost impossible, and this is the only way the FDA
Yeah, on
allows
the trails,
this.
sure.
It's impossible, there is no shredding of a document. Like you can do physically,
Right.
shred a document, that's not an option. The FDA does not approve those kind of systems. They require an audit trail. So it's actually, you can argue, even almost impossible to commit that kind of fraud and hide things from sponsors. Like the example we opened this one with, where they asked us to delete data,
Right.
right? There's going to be an audit trail in the ABC of that data being deleted,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, I mean, of course there will be.
So, a lot to unpack, but this person's question is, what kind of skills does this Centra monitor need to have? If maybe the entire industry is not going to shift to virtual trials, as I don't think it will anytime soon. I think we got a couple decades as traditional sites to figure things out.
Right.
But
I would agree.
Chris and I are trying to get involved in virtual trials.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with experimenting with what the marketplace gives you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the skills are the same as a CRA. I think you need less CRAs. Or
I think a doctor would make a physician, an MD, medical doctor, could make for a good central CRA. In the
would
sense
they
that,
want to?
in the sense that, because who's going to be the medical monitor? You need the medical monitor reviews things that are pointed out to them typically, right? And they might review the labs and ECGs, like all. But in this case, a lot of that's eliminated, right? You don't have anybody pointing out, hey, this person, there's no real CRA or coordinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who's going to say, hey, this person missed their last 3 doses of drug, right?
Well, the medical monitor would be at the sponsor level.
And you're relying on the patient to put in accurate numbers. Right?
Patient-reported outcomes.
Well, not patient-reported outcomes. I'm talking about IP, man. Like
IP accountability.
yeah. So they have to put in how many tablets they took or capsules,
Right.
whatever it
But
might be.
if you notice, more and more studies are going to the injections and the infusions and the devices. So now you have that because because the compliance is not an issue with infusions and injections. You
Sure.
just make sure that the person who's administering it is logging it in
Yeah,
properly.
we're for sure not getting away from bills anytime soon.
No, not anytime soon.
Not
But
eliminating
you're seeing, and if virtual trials is not going to be replacing all trials, it makes the most sense to do it with devices,
Sure.
diagnostics, and if you go one step further, injections and infusions. That's plenty of studies right there. That's maybe 100,000 trials a year,
Yeah, maybe.
right?
But yeah, getting back
There's
to
like 200,000 in the U.S. on average every year. Half of those, I think, are devices, infusions, injections, and diagnostics.
well, you think that many?
When you combine all those, yeah.
Okay.
And then other ones where there are no treatments, it's just like interview techniques or coping skills. Well, yeah, when you group all those in, I think it's about half of them.
Alright.
What I was going to say, because a lot of people, when they hear about risk-based monitoring, which we didn't really even talk about much, but we've done podcasts and videos on risk-based monitoring. It's in the book, The Comprehensive Guide to Clinical Research. It's going to be out in April 2019. We're working on it right now. Chris is putting the words on paper right now. He's showing his skills right now as a great technical writer. Correct?
Sure.
We talk about that. So we're not talking about risk-based monitoring, but to not be alarmist and pessimist. Everyone thinks that risk-based monitoring and virtual trials is going to eliminate jobs. And that might be the case for some if we go to sightless trials. We don't know yet. But as far as CRAs are concerned, the argument is, instead of doing 200,000 trials a year, because they're expensive the way they're currently being done,
No, absolutely.
they can do like 1 million trials a year. And then they'll still need the same number of monitors, even though they're central. They'll still need, that supply and demand is still going to be there. And then there's going to be more biotech starting up. This is going to foster innovation, make it easier for startups to do studies like us with our exosome thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Makes it cheaper, makes it easier, it's virtual. We can do more. We can do that study. Right? As opposed to in the past where you needed investors and it's expensive.
Yeah.
So the argument, the positive argument is it will grow the pie. There's also the contrarian aspect where it says it's going to eliminate all jobs, everyone's going to be a robot. Anyone who we hire is going to be a robot.
You know it's coming eventually.
That's coming for every industry. We're all screwed. We can just end the podcast on that note.
Yeah, you're all screwed.
The robots win in the end.
Terminator.
Right? What do you think? Closing thoughts on this?
Well, closing thoughts. I don't really have closing thoughts, but did we answer that gentleman's question?
Yeah. Oh, well, let's see. Do you think we did?
No.
So,
I
answer.
think he had a number of questions, but I don't remember what they were.
Okay.
What skill set? That I think we can answer.
Well, I just found a colonoscopy guy for our
Oh, that's good.
site in Atlanta. We have a brand new site in Atlanta. Chris and I are minority partners, silent partners,
For the most part.
mostly advisors, right?
Yep.
But it's good. It gives us a presence in Atlanta. And it helps us diversify our portfolio for DSCS.
Mm-hmm.
Gives us a home for our interns in Atlanta, which there are many. So what do you think we didn't answer of this guy?
I don't recall.
Unbelievable. Let me read the question again.
While I was reading the question, whatever the person's name is,
I won't mention his name because he didn't say it.
Yeah, exactly. But
I don't even know how to pronounce it. So.
assuming you've driven on Autobahn, what's your top speed? Hey, let Dan know. I'm curious.
Let me ask him.
No, you gotta just ask him.
Oh, okay. I don't even need to LinkedIn message you. LinkedIn message me the answer to that. And who will be working as a central monitor? What are the skills required? How can I better prepare now to get such a job in the future? We didn't answer that part. I think just do more of the same. Try to become a CRA as quickly as possible. Because he's not a CRA right now. He's a clinical research assistant.
Right.
Try to become a CRA ASAP. Right? And if more and more studies start using risk-based monitoring, you're going to be exposed to more and more of these tools and technologies, which is going to be an easier segue for you to be a central monitor in the future.
I think he's jumping the gun though, personally. But maybe
Yeah, but why not?
Maybe it's different in Germany.
No, he wants to be proactive.
No, I understand.
He's a young person.
Okay.
So he's just getting started in this industry, and he's like, hey, I don't want to be replaced by
Right.
technology. What can I
Sure,
do?
that makes sense.
Excellent question. Thank you for stimulating a fascinating discussion.
If you were 10 years from retirement, I would say not to worry about it.
Yeah.
If he's just starting out, sure, I could see that in his lifetime having to.
Shit, I'm just starting out. I'm worried about these things.
Okay.
37, man. By the time I don't plan on stopping working in this industry till like my 70s. I'm gonna own the Clippers though. In the meantime, and we will be the sponsors doing virtual trials,
No, there you go.
and we will have the sites. Conflict of interest.
Court, apparently not.
Maybe not. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. But anyways, thank you everyone for watching. It really means a lot. Listen to check for the book as soon as it comes out in April. Matter of fact, text the word guru right now to 3. Let me see what the number is. I don't want to have them text somebody else. Text guru right now to the number 31996. Alright, you'll be notified of the book first. You and I gotta talk some strategies about marketing.
Any charge associated with that?
No.
Okay.
The general text messaging rates may apply with your provider. Have nothing to do with me.
Right, with your service.
This is free. Text guru to 31996. You and I gotta talk some marketing strategies. But if you're on that texting list, let's just put it this way. You're gonna be so far ahead of the others.
So far.
You can get so much good out of it. We're going to talk about that right now. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Remind me to talk to you about that right now.
Fair enough.